But today we have the one, the only, the unrefutable Maria Gillen. Yes. And we're very, very happy to have her with us. She's a wonderful person. I had the joy and privilege and honor of meeting her in Marrakesh, and we've kind of kept in touch off and on since then. But I can tell you that you're in for a double treat today because she is magnificent. And so, without further ado, Maria, it's all on you.
Hello, everybody! Céad Míle Fáilte Riva. So it's lovely to be able to greet you in the Irish language. It means 100,000 welcomes to you. And that is how we say hello in Ireland, and that is how we welcome you. And I have to say my biggest hello to our most loyal fan of the children's storytelling, and that is King Louis. King Louis in the house. Lovely to see you, King. So Louis is amazing, and the last time he was going for a one big swimming exam. So at the end of this evening, we'll have to find out if he has now gotten his King Louis swimming badge so that he can swim across the Irish Ocean to me. I hope you can, Louis. Come on, swim to Ireland for me. It's only a few miles, you know. So this evening I thought I would start with the story of the sea. This story is over 2,000 years old, and it is about it's a love story. Do you like love stories, Louis? Yeah, me too. So I'll begin with the story. Once upon a time, in the time outside time, for the she folk they stand outside the time of human beings, there lived a beautiful woman. Her name was Fiola. Fiola meaning dear, and she lived on the land, the little island called Tirnanog, which means the land of the forever young. She was so beautiful that she was pursued in her own land, but she had her eyes on the island of Eire, on the island of Ireland where I live. In those days, Louis, you'll never believe it, but there was so many trees in Ireland that a red squirrel could get up the tree here in Cork at the bottom of Ireland and could travel in the crowns of the trees all the way to Antrim in the north of this island without ever having to come to ground. We don't have that many trees now in Ireland, unfortunately. But this was in the olden days, over 2,000 years ago. So Fiona decided that she would visit Ireland. And because she was a magical being, she could come through the portals. The portals are where the whitethorn trees grow. And everybody in Ireland knows never to touch a fairy fort or a whitethorn tree. And so she popped out of the roots of a white thorn tree in Banna Beach in Kerry in the south of Ireland. And there she took to the beautiful green fields, the rolling fields of the Golden Vale, where the Or is made, where the beautiful golden butter is made. I know Baba C has a particular fondness for Kerrygold butter. And as she did, and as she looked around, she saw a really handsome man. His name was Fionn McCool, and he was the lead warrior of the Fianna of Ireland. The Fianna were a beautiful race of young men who tried at all accounts to avoid war, but if war came their way, they would be the last men standing. She fell in love with Fionn McCool, and there was a dark spirit on the other side that came through the ground, and Tallav that came through the ground and rose up. He wanted our Fiola for himself, and he hunted her like an animal, like the deer she was. And we should give some thought to that when we are hunting animals. For you never know in this land of Ireland if some shape shifting is going on. He hunted her in the north, the south, the east, and the west of Ireland. She came through my beautiful county of Cork, and finally, as she was almost running out of hope, she was making for the little portal that she'd come through in Kerry when she met Fionn McCool. And as soon as she saw him, her spirits lifted and her heart got light. And he brought her to his Cashlawn, to his castle. And there, Louis, they had a great time. They fell in love, looking into one another's eyes, laughing at the same jokes. They both loved horse riding. And so it wasn't long before they got married and they had a little baby of their own. Now, if a being from Tir na Nog comes to live here in Ireland, they have to give up their longevity. They have to give up the fact that they are beings that never die and they have to become mortal. And Fiola was just about to take this bargain when her beloved went on a hunt. 1 week passed, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, months passed, and she hadn't seen her handsome man, Fionn McCool, and every day she'd look out through the window of the castle. She knew that if she stayed within the walls of the castle, that all would be safe, herself and her beautiful baby Oisin. But this day, over the hills, she saw his fair hair like gold under the sun, and his beautiful white horse, and he was riding flat out, coming home to her, and her heart jumped, and she opened the castle gates, and she ran to meet him. But shape-shifting is something that the dark energies can do, just like the light energies of Tir na Nog. And as she made her way towards her beautiful man, the black mist rose, and the shape-shifting happened, and the dark evil one stood forward. She screamed, and she left her baby down under the white thorn tree. She scooped up a bottle of water from the sea, and she brought it with her through the portal to Tir na Nog. There was a special reason for this water. You see, if she put it into a little bowl, and if she ran her fingers across this water, she would be able to see her Oisin growing up. Oisin in the Irish language means the little deer. At first, his smile was infectious, and a little head would come over Fiola's shoulder, the head of Niamh, and she also looked into the bowl. Oh, he has a lovely smile. Hasn't he a lovely smile, Fiola? Said Niamh. He has indeed, she said. He is my son, and he's growing strong in the land of Éire. Whoa, said Niamh. Years passed, and after a while she said, Fiola, I think his smile is beautiful. It is, said Fiola. It's a beautiful smile. And another few years passed, and she said, I think he's kind. I see him being so kind to the animals. I see him having a good word for everybody that he meets. That's true of my son, said Fiola. More years passed as Niamh grew into the princess that she was to be. And she looked at Fiola and she said, Fiola, I think I love your son and I would like your blessing. And Fiola gave it gladly. So Niamh went to her father, who was the Ree, the king in Tir na Nog. And she said, I must go to Éire, father, and find this man. What do you need from me? Said her father, fully supportive of all his daughter's wishes. I need a couple ball na mara, she said, a white horse of the sea. Those horses are not made of blood and bone and marrow. Oh no, those horses are made of sea and spray and spirit. Fiola walked to the edge of the water, and looking into the water, she called forth the most beautiful, the strongest, the most lithe of the couple born of the white horses. And when it stepped onto land, it went from being a misty creature to being as solid as you or I. With great grace she flew up onto the back of the horse, side saddle, for that is how humans paint her, and she has been painted many times. The horse took off into the mist of the sea, half flying, half trotting over Nadountha, over the waves, until they came to the edge of Era, where the Atlantic Ocean kisses the land. And as the couple born stepped up on the beach at Banna, Oisin felt a strangeness in the air, a stillness, for he was half she, and he could feel the magic. He sent his brother Fianna back home. Go home and get the meal ready, he said, and I will be there shortly. Then he became as still as stone under that whitethorn tree. It is a particular gift to become that still, so still that even the coneen, the rabbit, can come up and without fear look into your eyes. He held that gentle stillness now, as Niamh trotted up behind his head. Then moving just his head, he turned to see her. And when she saw him, when they looked into one another's eyes, they knew that there would be nobody on this earth for either him or her. I know your mother Fiola, she said. I thought you might, he said. She lives in Tirnanog, from where I came. Will you come with me, she said. And having the spirit of adventure in him, he jumped up behind her on the horse and laughed out loud as they walked onto the sea. They went through the magic mist, Ceodriachta, the magic mist between Éire and Tirnanog, between Ireland and the land of the forever young. And coming on shore, he fell at the knees of his mother, and she kissed his head. They feasted, they laughed, they sang with joy, they told great stories, they danced, they were full of joy. 3 days the feasting went on, 3 sunsets in Tirnanog, and finally Oisin fell to his knee and asked his beloved Niamh to marry him. I will, she said. He jumped up then and said, I must go home and tell my father. No, she said, I feel a feeling deep in my stomach. He didn't know her long enough yet to trust those feelings deep in her belly. And he said, I must go. I must go and keep the honour of the Fianna and tell my father and all my friends of my great fortune and my good news. Then I shall put a gasha on you, she said. A gasha is a warrior's promise. They would rather lose their life than not keep that promise. Anything, my love, he said, anything for you. You must not put one toe on the land of Éire, she said, for I feel that if you do, I shall never see you again. That's a promise easily given, he said, smiling at her and putting her fears at ease. He jumped back up on the back Grim, Coppelbon and Mara, on the back of the white horse of the sea, and he took to the Ceodriachta, to the magic mist, leaving Tirnanog and coming up on Banna Beach in County Kerry. But it was not the beach he had left. Where were the trees gone? There was sand, and then there was this long, perfect stone. Where had that been hewn out of? It was so rectangular and precise. And then he started talking to the people. Conasatashiv, he said, and they looked at him as if he was mad. What? They said. And he thought, this is a harsh language. What is this foreign language they speak in my era? And then he saw two men with their arms folded, young men, and they watching an old man trying to move a stone. Where was the honour of the Fianna gone? Help him, he said. Tor Cower, help them. But they could not understand what he was saying, and they looked at him blankly. So he clicked at the horse, and he walked up towards the big, massive stone. He put out his small finger, for it would only take the tip of his small finger to move that stone. Such was the strength of the warriors of the Fianna. But the leather around the belly of the horse was not as strong. It cracked with the pressure, and he fell from the horse. First his face, then his shoulder, then his knees, and finally his feet touched the land of Eire. And as they did, the witnesses say that it seemed that all the liquid left his body. His cheeks fell in, his long golden hair got longer still and turned grey before leaving his head entirely. His skin followed, and then his skeleton fell to dust right there in front of their eyes. They say now that if you sit on the grey rock of Banna Beach as the wind is blowing, that Gothnaguiha, the voice of the wind, collected Oisin's voice. If you sit on that rock and you listen to the wind, you can hear him calling for his love. Niamh, Niamh, Sinné Mushkale. That is my story, and I hope you liked it. Oh, thank you,
Finally,
Louis, for that great clap. Oh, there's Baba C giving me a lovely smile. And
yes.
Terry and Norman. It's lovely to see everybody on our lovely chat again. So next, I think I'll stick with the theme of the Irish shape-shifting. Recently, I was in Finuiga, which is in County Kerry. It's about 10 minutes from Listowel. It has one pub and two storytelling houses, and one of them is 300 years old. Imagine, Sheehan Storytelling Cottage, 300 years old. And often, when story visitors come to Ireland, they come to that cottage and they leave a story there for me. We are running a program called the Sean-Nós Nua, so it's the old ways made new. Isn't that lovely? The Dúchas Nua. So if you ever wanted to find out about Irish stories, you can go on www.duchas, that's DUCHAS.ie. And no matter what address you put in Ireland, you'll find a story there. Do you want to know where those stories come from?
When you get a pause, would you put that in the chat? Because
Yes, I will indeed put it in the chat, but I tell you now that when this country was being born as a republic, Babasi, the president's wife, her name was Sinead de Valera, she gave a copybook to each child in Ireland. And she said, go home to your grandparents and your neighbours and your parents and collect all the stories and then write them in these copybooks. So they did that. Isn't that amazing?
Yes.
And all the copybooks were collected. And then they were kept in Dublin Castle until the year 2016, which was 100 years after the Rising. And then they wanted to get all the stories up on the internet before 2022. So I think most of them are up there now, and they're still typing in some of those stories from 100 years ago. Isn't that
Whoa.
brilliant? What a
Yes,
legacy. And it's
that is
available to
fantastic.
everybody. So I will type that at the end of our session here, but I'm going to tell you my next story now.
I can't wait.
So,
You could read the alphabet and make it fascinating. I'm going to be quiet now.
thank you, Papa C. You're so kind. So, this story I created for Finuig because they have a competition every year. It is the oldest storytelling competition in Ireland. It's in Kerry, and the prize is €700. So it's the fattest purse for a story that you'll get in the whole of Ireland. So I came second this year. I was delighted, and I told this story. So I'm going to tell it to you now, but first I'm going to put into the typing duchess.ie so that you know where to get our ancient stories, our old stories. Excuse me. There is a place near where I live, and it's beautiful. It's right in the middle of Cork City, and you have to go through a very old gate to get into it near the Black Man pub. You'd like that one now, Baba C. There was a spirit that appeared, and all you could see was the dark outline. So they called him the Black Man. And that pub is over 200 years old. And sometimes he will guide you to this beautiful gate. It's like the secret garden. If you didn't know it was there, you wouldn't know it was there. When you go through this gate, you come to a very wild part of Ireland, like the forest that we spoke about in the last story. But if you go into the river and you follow the path of the river, you soon come to fields, and it feels wrong. It feels as if the trees should go on. And that was the thought that gave birth to this story. Once upon a time, there was a man called Jim, and he worked in the hospital. He was a healer, or so he thought. Very soon now he was going to graduate as a doctor. And in his last year, they decided to bring in the storyteller, because everyone in Ireland knows that there's healing deep in our stories. He remembered that day. He remembered how she came through the front doors and how the busy hospital seemed to stop. She looked around with her keen blue eyes and found his eyes. He hadn't intended to go to her lecture, but he, along with all of the other young doctors, followed her to the lecture theatre, where she told about the stories of long ago and how they could give a little bit of peace to your heart. She told them about the Mana Fasa, the wise women that hid all of their medicine deep in the stories. And the way she spoke and the deep way she'd look at you meant that you filed every bit of information she gave you in the back of your head. Afterwards, he found himself seeking her out. He had never done anything like this before in his life. And when she touched his hand, it was like a great electricity went between the two of them, and she was able to look deep into his soul, and he was able to see the deep peace of her own heart. That was it. Every time he closed his eyes after that, all he could hear was the beat of the drums, the beat of the bodhrán, like his fast-paced heart. And very soon the words followed. Is Michel Maktira, she Maktira, I'm in a coney, I mask na she, heavenly, is Misha she. Oh, he wished he'd paid attention at school. What did these old ancient Irish words mean? He had no clue what they meant, and it was driving him mad. And every time he closed his eyes, the drums would start again behind his eyelids, and those words. And over time, he couldn't sleep in his bed anymore. He had to leave the house. As soon as he lay down, he'd have to get up again and leave the house. He took to taking his little tent with him everywhere. And in his dream, he saw the black man, that ancient hostelry on the top of the old Dublin road in Cork. In his dreams, he saw the black man leading him across the road to the entrance into this beautiful place. He thought it was a dream, but he must have heard it somewhere, for when he went out hiking, he found it. When he set up his tent there, he slept like he hadn't slept since he was a child, the sleep of the innocence. And in that deep sleep, the meaning of those words came to him in a way that he could understand. I am the wolf. I am the she-wolf. I live amongst the fair folk on the banks of the Lee. I am she. She in the Irish language is spelled S-I-D-H-E and S-I father. She meant she was a she-wolf and had magic in her. She was of the magical people. What do you want from me? He said. What do you want? And just like that, he woke up. And he knew it was because of the way he had asked the question. He had to leave it unfurl. He had to leave it unfold. They were looking for him by now. He hadn't turned up to work in the longest time, and nobody had seen him in his house. An old wise woman, a Ban Fassa, found him and brought him to the edge of the forest near Murphy's Rock on the top of Cork. He told her his story, and she said, "The story is only half told yet. You will have to be patient." Now the mist started to rise from the ground, for it was coming into the month of November, and the Ceodriachta Corky began to rise, the magic mists of Cork. Cork in the Irish language means the marshes, the wetlands, and it was always full of magic. In his waking dreams, he could see a she-wolf coming out of the mist. She began to send him dreams in his waking time as he sat in stillness at the edge of the river. Long ago, in his line, he saw that an ancestor had fallen in love with a she-wolf in her human form. He tried to get her to live in the house, but she couldn't do that. She began to roam at night. And then the important men decided the forest must be cut down so that she had no place to roam. Those trees made way for fields, the fields that exist at Murphy's Rock now. But the land cries for the trees that were once its cover, its protection. And he knew that he needed to replant those trees. So he gathered the little seedlings and he planted them where he could. And for a while all was well, till in the spring, the men in their yellow jackets and their big yellow monsters came to knock down the forest one more time. He came to the edge of the forest and he said, "Can you not leave us alone?" And they looked at him, and the way he spoke and the truth in his words, it touched the hearts of the men that drove those tractors. But they said, "We have to feed our families, and this is our job, and we will cut down the trees." "There'll be no luck in it for ye," he said, "no severus, no wealth in doing this." They swore that as soon as he said those words, the mist rose from the land, and the wolf came forward, looking at them out through her beautiful blue eyes like sapphires dancing out of the mist. And when she howled, "Oh!" it felt like a curse. They dropped their tools and they ran. And then came the newspapers and the people from the television. But they were kept at bay by the thickening mist. And now there was not one she-wolf, but many. And when the people saw this sign, they said, "This place must be forested." And people came to help him to live in their tents on the fields as the trees grew. And right now, the trees are about this high. And hope has been seeded once more by the she-wolf. Ismisha Maktira, She Maktira, Tomimokoni, Imaskna She, Hevna Lee, Ismisha, She, Oh! Shine Mushkale, that is my story. I hope you liked it.
That was a howling good story.
Oh, look at that. What a great use of words. I
And in
love
fact,
that.
you could say that they were barking up the right tree.
They were barking up the right tree. I
I
love
know that's
it.
bad. That's bad.
Now I'm in a different house to my own, and I'm not sure of the time.
I'm watching you. You got time for another story.
I have
If
time
you
for
would
another
grace us.
story. Brilliant. I'm delighted I have time for another story. So let me see. What story will I tell you next? Did I tell you the story that my great granny told me
If
about
you
the
did,
mouse
it's
in the
worth
bed?
telling again.
I will tell you again because it's such a great story. I must fix my camera. There we go. Is that better? Yes, it is. So, my granny, let's tell you her name first. My granny was Anne Conroy, and she lived up in the heart of Ireland on the side of the Slieve Bloom Mountains. Isn't that a lovely place to live? And she lived to be over 100 years old. And she told her great grandchildren, and I'm one of them, she told us her stories. I heard most of my stories from my wonderful mama and from my granny, but my great granny told me one or two. And because they were rare, they're like pearls and they stick in your heart. And this story is a story that has come across the centuries since 1879. My great granny was born in 1879 and she passed away in 1979, the year the Pope came to visit Ireland. Isn't that amazing? And she told us this story. She said, "Stories die unless they're told forward." So I tell you this story if you promise to tell it forward and to say that it came from Annie Conroy in 1879. Is that a bargain? Is that a bargain? Very good. So here's the story. Once upon a time, a granny was leaning on her half door in her little white Irish cottage. And as she looked out the door, she could see the beautiful purple flowers laid out before her like a little carpet. And between them was the emerald green grass and it was frosted nicely by the grey sky. There's no colours like it. People come from all over the world to paint that scene now. But in those days, nobody came to visit Ireland. And as she was there dreaming, standing at her half door, looking out on this scene, she was remembering the 9 beautiful children that she had reared there, fine and strong and tall, taller than her because she was quite small. A lot of them had left this country for further afield. Sure, they did say in Ireland that you reared your children for the boat. But her youngest child was living only 20 miles away. Now you might think that 20 miles is not a lot, and it's not if you have a car. But these were in the days of very bad, twisty, windy roads, and carts and horses and donkeys. There was no cars in those days. Now every so often her youngest child would bring 2 of her brood, for she had a fine big brood as well, up the twisty path to see their granny. And it was the turn of the 2 youngest, Moira and Pádraig, and they were all excited to come to Granny's house. And she was thinking, what will I make for them? She was after getting a fine lump of Irish bacon. She boiled it, and then she covered it with honey and molasses. There was a bit of lavender in there and a bit of cinnamon, and it was like what you'd see on a toffee apple, but it was all the nicer when you cracked it on a fine ham. There was beautiful cabbage. Cabbage in Ireland is gorgeous at this time of the year. You could eat it forever. And also there was soft golden turnips, and there was fluffy potatoes like you wouldn't get the like of anywhere else. And there was or, and there was golden butter to mash into the potatoes and to bring it all together. Her own teeth were swimming with the thought of feeding the children that beautiful dinner. And then there was Granny's apple tart. There was nobody in this world was able to make an apple tart like Granny. She'd a secret ingredient, and when you'd ask her, she'd say, sure, 'tis the gra, 'tis the love that I put into it, and she'd give you a little wink. She took that secret to the grave with her, and to this day I've never tasted an apple tart like great Granny's apple tart. Well, this day she looked out over the half door, down the hill into the fields below, and she could see where the start of the little track started. She was looking for the blue dot, for she knew when the blue dot started to rise up the road that they were on their way. She scanned and she looked and she scanned, and finally there was a little blue dot far, far away down the hill, and it started coming up slowly on the windy, windy path up to Granny's door. Finally they arrived, and Granny put out her 2 love, she put out her 2 hands to greet her grandchildren, and they ran straight under them. "Oh," said Granny, "not even a little gra, not even a little love for their granny, not even a little cutch, not even a little hug. What's going on?" she said to her daughter. "Oh, ma'am," she said, "they have a new technology. It's called school." "School," said Granny. "Oh my goodness, tell me about school." "Well, they're learning to read and to write," she said. "They can read stories from books." "Are they our stories?" said Granny. "Some of them," said Mommy. "But also," she said, "I get them to tell our stories." "That's good," said Granny, "because otherwise we'd lose them. I'll have to test them now," she said. "Come out here, children." So the 2 of them came out. Moira was about this far up over the half door, but Pádraig was only this much over the half door. It was only just under his nose, and his eyes seemed bigger and wider because of it. Granny said, "Look out there now and tell me what you can see." Moira was at the age where she knew everything. You know that age, don't you? She was looking out and she said, "Granny, I can see at least 40 shades of green out there. There's the trees and the grass, and then there's the reeds at the side, and they're all different greens." "They are," she said. Well done, your observation is good. And she beamed to be given praise by Granny. And then Granny looked at Porrick. And you, she said, well, I can see beautiful jewels in the grass, Granny. There's reds and purples and yellows. They're the flowers. They're like the jewels, aren't they, Granny? They are, she said. They're like nature's Severus. They're like nature's riches. Well done, my boy. And then she turned again to Moira. But what can you see moving, she said. For the creatures out there, they're so good at hiding themselves. Moira trained her eye out over the half door. Granny, she said, I saw the flick of a soft ear. There's a coneen down there. There's a little rabbit down there. There is indeed, said Granny. Sure, I feed that rabbit carrots myself every morning. Oh, Granny, that's brilliant. You have a quick eye, she said. You have to have a very quick eye to see a rabbit's ear. And then she looked at the little boy. And Porrick, not to be outdone, said, Granny, I heard it before I could see it. I heard the blackbird with the orange beak that sings so beautiful. And it made a sound like this, Granny. It did, she said. My goodness, your whistling is coming on. You're a great boy, and you'll be a fine musician and a great teller of tales. I love stories, said Porrick. With that, Granny opened the door. Go on out now, she said, and play out there. Forget your books for the moment. Forget your books and use your legs and your eyes and your ears. Open up your heart and see what happens. Well, they had a great time. They had a great time running and jumping, just like the wild creatures that live on Slieve Bloom. And as they were moving further away, Granny called out after them, Don't go near Doonashee! Don't go way near the fairy fort, for God's sake! And they roared back, Of course we won't, Granny! We've heard all the stories! Then Maria sat down where she was, and she made a beautiful crown out of daisies for her head. And Porrick, he caught a bee in mid-air inside the jam jar. There were so many bees around in those days. After a while, Maria couldn't help looking. Moira was looking at Doonashee. She was looking at the fairy fort. I wonder, she said, rubbing the side of her nose, what's in there? Porrick caught her and he said, Don't be looking in there now. Ah, shut up, she said, as she began walking towards Doonashee. And when she got there, she put one foot over the fairy's place, and then the other foot followed it. She noticed that the daisies in here were perfect, each petal the twin sister of the petal that went before, unlike her little crown of daisies with pink edges and leaves and things that were not the same as one another. She picked one flower for an experiment and it made a noise like that. That should have been a warning. Do you think she heeded that warning? No, of course she didn't. We'd have no story if she did. So she picked a buttercup and she picked a little bit of lavender. And they kept making the beautiful noise until she had a tiny little bouquet. And her brother said, You'll be in trouble. The she will kill you. And she gave the answer that a lot of Irish siblings give to one another. She said, Ah, shut up, you. You're always taking all my joy. And then she ran on her very long legs down the hill until she got to Granny's cottage. She ran in through the half door and she went, Granny, look what I have for you. Granny smelt them and she said, Did you collect them for me, Alanna? Aren't you the joy in my heart, McCushla? And she took from the top of her dresser a jam jar, and as she was bringing it down, the sun glinted through it, and it was nicer than any expensive crystal that you can imagine. She filled it with good Irish well water, and she put the flowers into it. They threw their colours up on the wall like little jewels, and the perfume in the air was magical. But then Porrick came to the door. Granny! Granny! Granny said, take a breath, Alanov, take a breath. And he went, Granny. What is it? She said, you're frightening me. He said, Granny, those are Blana she, Granny. Those are the flowers of the fairies. She picked them in Doona she. Granny couldn't believe her ears. Her face went white. She picked up the flowers and she walked out through that half door, up to Cloughnashee, up to the rock of the fairies, and she put it down there and she threw her arms to heaven and she said, oh, she, please don't see me. She's only a young little girl, she didn't know any better. Oh, please let her off with it this one last time. I hope you like getting your flowers back. This more than anything frightened the living daylights out of Moira, for she had never seen her granny look so scared. They went back to the cottage then and they'd a fine dinner. Oh, they loved the ham with the beautiful sweet edge to it, and they loved the cabbage and the soft turnips and the beautiful potatoes and the butter just mashed through all of it. It was the nicest dinner you could get. And afterwards, Granny produced her granny's apple tart. And then they had a room to themselves. In an Irish household of that time, you never had a room to yourself. Moira opened the door and she took a big run at the bed. And if she did, when she landed on the bed, she jumped out twice as fast. Ah! She said. What is it, Alanov? Said Granny. Oh, Granny! The bed bit me, Granny! The bed bit me. Granny thought she was being a little bit dramatic. Girls can get dramatic at that time of their lives, you know. But when she came down and she put her hands across the soft mattress, she said, Alanov, that's the softest bed in the whole of Ireland. Get into bed there now, she said, and I'll tuck you in. This time Moira was more careful. She was putting her hip down on the bed. When Granny saw with her own eyes the nettles growing out of the bed to bite her where the sun don't shine. Oh, lad, if she said, the she did see. The she did see, and they're not going to let you sleep. Moira did this. And they could see her very tonsils, and they could hear her in the next county. No, crying won't help, said Granny, and my head, I'm getting a headache. And then she said, can you remember any of the stories? Sure, in the stories we know how to please the she. Oh, Granny, I can't remember the stories, they're too upset. But Granny, you've told every story that was ever told. Can you remember? Granny said, if you don't tell the stories forward, they fall out of your head. And I haven't had anyone to tell stories to in the longest time. So let me remember now. Can you try to be quiet while I remember? In the next room, Pádraig had heard everything, and he loved stories. He loved stories so much that he knew exactly what to do. He took his fadog, his little tin whistle, off the top of the press, and he put it inside his coat. And he walked the windy, windy path to Cloughnashee, to the rock of the fairies, just before their little bit of land, Doonashee, the fort of the fairies. He knew what it was to wait to get in on the gap. If you ever force yourself into a session, they won't thank you for it. If you come before the applause stops, or in the last line of someone's song, or before they've finished the punchline of a story, they won't look kindly on it. He knew he had to wait for 3 heartbeats after the last song to come in with his fadog. So he waited and waited as they sang and danced and told stories and laughed at jokes. And when the 3 heartbeats came, he took out his little tin whistle and he played the sad tune. Da, 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 da. everything stopped. All of their heads turned at exactly the same second. All of their eyes blinked at exactly the same second, and it was very disconcerting. Then there was a kerfuffle as Ree made his way to the front of the proceedings. Ree was the king of the fairies. Doesn't it sound lovely in Irish? Ree. Will we all try it? Are you ready? Ree. That's it. I never knew you all spoke the Irish language. You're all amazing. So Ree came to the front and he said, well, how much? How much for that lovely tune? Now, I'm going to give you a tip. If you ever find yourself in a similar situation, never ask for gold or silver or jewels or wealth. They don't like that. Instead, ask for a long life or a happy life or wonderful friends that you can trust with your life. And it was something like this that Ree was expecting from this lovely young man, Pádraig. But instead he said, I was wondering if you could take the bad luck off my sister and take the nettles from her bed. Ree threw his pipa down on the ground, his pipe down on the ground. Then he took off his cappy and his little cap and he followed the pipe with that. And he looked at Pádraig and he said, are you trying to trick me? Are you trying to trick me? I won't be tricked. Pádraig said, oh God, no, Ree, I would never try to trick you. Honest to God, I have way too much respect. And this kind of mollified Ree a little bit. He said, it's just that if she don't sleep, none of us will sleep. Ree picked up his pipe and he put his cap back on his head. And he said, that's true, all right. She's that kind of young one. If she don't sleep, no one will sleep. All right, so the meaw's gone off your sister. But, said Pádraig, but, he said, you have another request. It's a good tune, but I don't know if it's a great tune. No, Ree, I'm just wondering, is she too afraid to go to sleep, or is she asleep now? Ree went back inside his eyes, a little bit like this. And he searched around in his head. And then he came back into his eyes like this. She is indeed. She is sleeping the sleep of the innocents, and so it will be unless she ever puts one toe on the ground of the she in this lifetime. Do you hear me? Will you tell her? I will tell her, said Pádraig. I will indeed. And so he stowed his little fadog inside his coat, and he made his way along the windy road back to Granny's cottage, where the moon was high in the sky, and all he could hear from inside the cottage was as the women slept. Sin é mo scéal. That is my story. Did you like that story?
Oh,
Very good.
I swear I could listen to you all day and then some. You could
Oh,
recite
thank you
a bit and
so much
enhance us.
for letting me tell the last story, Baba. I really appreciate
Ah,
that.
the
So, and
pleasure, the
that
pleasure.
story comes from my great granny across 2 centuries and 1 millennia. So please tell it forward. It's really important to tell that forward.
All right, that was great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Your last name is pronounced Gillen.
Gillen, Gillen. Yeah. My father was
I have
from
to
the
make
west of
sure.
Ireland, from Sligo. So that's where the name comes from. It's actually Spanish in origin.
Yes, the Black Irish.
Yeah, that's right.
Yes. I'm so enthralled. I asked about your last name because Americans are known to be kind of lazy when it comes to pronounce other people's names. And it's not really true. We just don't have the ear for it, but we're redeveloping the ear for it. So, Maria, as always, it is a pleasure and honor to hear you tell stories. I'm quite
Oh,
sure Sir Louis agrees with that. And you have fascinated us. And I can't wait until I hear you tell stories again. And maybe I'll get a chance to interview you. you know.
I'd
So that
love
would be,
that. Yeah.
and so for those just tuning in, you are, in fact, for those just tuning in, you missed a marvelous session of being enthralled by the storytelling of Maria Gillen. And for those of you who were with us the whole way, I know you joined me with saying, yay, I'm yay, because we truly enjoyed the storytelling. So a little piece of business real quick. Next week, same time, same station. We have this was a special treat, but we have another special treat coming in because Princess Jasname will be the featured storyteller for Stories for Children. And
Amazing.
Jasname is fascinating. She was one of our youngest storytellers and has been with us for a few years. And we're watching her bloom not only into teenhood and adulthood, but also her storytelling becomes better and better each time she tells it. So please tune in next Friday, same story station, same story time. My name is Baba C. On behalf of John Rowe and the others, I bid you adieu and a don't. And once again, a round of applause for Maria Gillen. Oh, I'm telling you, this has been quite a treat. So Norman and Terry and Russell and the others, those both on this platform and other social media platforms, thank you for tuning in. Oh, and by the way, for those that can, please, there's a hat by Maria's name. Drop a few coins in there because storytellers have to eat too.
Can I just, yeah, thank you for that, Babasi. But can I just say that the World Storytelling Cafe does amazing work, absolutely amazing work on a shoestring and on the heart love of its storytellers. And a lot of the time, we're not in Marrakesh to help, you know, but we will be in Marrakesh in January. So I'm really looking forward to that and to seeing the
Yes,
storytellers here again. So, if you want an excellent holiday, a really out of the world holiday that's really unusual and once in a lifetime, I would suggest that you come to Marrakesh when the storytellers are there because we take over the Square El Fana. And last time we had a go at the world record for the longest storytelling session, and
yes.
it was our practice session. But next year we're going to do it for real, and Guinness is going to be there. So the
Oh,
Guinness
wow.
World Records are going to be there to check out that we're telling those stories. So in January, I believe it's the 5th of January, but I
Oh,
need to check
January, I think we're the oh, I just forgot it. But we're toward halfway in January.
halfway in
Toward
January.
the
But if you look
toward the
up
end of
the
January.
World Storytelling Cafe website, you'll find it, won't you, Babasi?
Yes, yes, yes. And I look forward to seeing you because I will be there in January.
Yay!
So maybe
Yeah.
we'll get a chance to hang out a little bit. And as always, you've warmed my heart and my soul, and you have enriched my ears and my brain with your
Oh,
storytelling today. And I love the connections with your family and your history. And I just think that's truly wonderful. So once again, Asante Sana, which is Swahili for thank you very much. And
Fortunifa, Deutsch means welcome in Irish.
all right. So I think in Swahili, welcome is karibu. Yes,
Karibu. I like
karibu.
it.
It means welcome. And I look forward to sharing some more Nazi stories with you. All right. So for those who have tuned in, our time is just about up. But once again, Asante Sana, thank you very much for everyone who's tuned in and everyone who listened and got joy from Maria's stories. And so on behalf, once again, of John Rowe and the World Storytelling Cafe.com, we bid you a continued fantastic Friday, a wonderful weekend, and hopefully we'll see you in Marrakesh.
In
Take care.
Marrakesh!
Marrakesh!
Yay!
Yay!
Goodbye, Belle. Belle is saying
Even the
goodbye.
dog agrees.
Hey,
All right. Take
Bye,
care.
Louis.
Louis, so glad to have
Here.
you back.
Bye,
Everybody take
Norman.
care.
See you.
Bye,
We'll share a cup
Babasi.
of
Bye,
mint tea.
Russell. I see you.
Yes.
Russell Lily's here as well.
This has indeed been a treat. This lifted my spirits. I'm experiencing some challenges, but this lifted my spirits and has made the day great again. So fantastic Friday to one and all. All right. Take care,
Safe journey
everybody.
to all.
And for Waleed, see out. One day I'll explain that. All right.
On
Take
the
care.
ball. Goodbye for now. Oh, and happy birthday to Emer. We have a lovely storyteller in Kilkenny. Her name is Emer, and it's her birthday. So
All right.
happy
I'm
birthday,
still
Brenda.
celebrating mine. Mine was August 4th. I turned 72.
Woo! My
Yes.
I'm
goodness.
right for me.
Yes,
Yay!
72. Yes.
Was this in August? Yeah.
Yes, August 4th.
August is the month of storytellers. I'm the 13th. You're the 4th. Sarah is the
You
12th.
August
I'm the
14th?
13th. And Emer was yesterday.
Oh, my mother's birthday was August 14th.
Oh my goodness. There you
Yes,
go.
yes. And I have a nephew who was born August 3rd. And I have friends, technically, I have friends who are for every day of August. I know someone born on that day,
Yeah.
so it's great.
Yeah.
Hey,
Right.
Louis, how did you do with your swim?
Well, hold on. I got some news about swimming. So we're not doing swimming until 2 weeks. That's the bad news.
Oh.
And some good news that I've done swimming in the past. But I just went real swimming exam.
You got your certificate, didn't you?
But it's bad.
You got your certificate.
But I got a certificate for swimming.
All right.
Swimmer.
Well done.
All
Fantastic.
right. All right.
Great
Continue
stuff,
success.
Louis. That's brilliant.
And
Okay, we're still being live streamed, so I'm
14
going to
next
call it
time. I think
now.
they're about
And I'm
yeah,
going to
we
say
got to call.
goodbye. And I
Everyone
will
take
see you
care.
all next week.
Until the next time.
Bye.
Bye, Babsy.
Bye.
Later, Louis. Later, Maria.
Bye.
Later, Maria. All right. Thank you, Waleed, for flying the magic carpet ride. For yes. And Maria, wow, what can I say? I could listen to you all day and beyond. All right, we're out.
Thank you. I'm looking for here I found it, the leave button. Baba C, pleasure as always. Talk to you soon.
Pleasure's mine. The pleasure and honor is mine. Give my regards to your family.
I will. You too.
All right.
Bye.
All right. Next time, Waleed. Next time.